So Israel now goes and they're heading to the Red Sea. They're now experiencing their first bit of freedom in over 400 years. Generations are going. And so they march up and they get to this Red Sea and they're excited. They're like, Moses, we got it. Remember, they come boldly and they're happy. But now there's something else that happens because they're like, okay, what do we do now? Like, where we go? Moses, we know, God's with us, so we're going to go. And then all of a sudden, their commitment to Moses, they all voted at the board meeting to move forward. But now when things don't work out right, now they say, well, I didn't vote. I didn't say that we should go, because now they got a problem. They're like, wait a second, we're supposed to be going somewhere, but there's a Red Sea in front of us. There are mountains on the other side. And Pharaoh's army is bearing down on us. And so they're in a predicament here, because probably in their minds, they're like, if God was really with us, wouldn't the Red Sea be open by the time we got here? Come on, y'all. No, he's with us. He makes a way out of no way. We know that this was God. This was him. Why is the Red Sea not open? He knew we were coming here. As a matter of fact, he told us to be here. So why on earth is this happening? And so here's what starts to happen in the minds of the Israelites. They are trying to understand, is the Red Sea an obstacle that we need to get through, or a closed door saying God ain't with us? Now that's the question for every single one of us today. As you are operating in the will and purpose of God that you think that it is, and everything is going fine, but then you get to that one moment and you got to ask yourself, when the rejection letter comes in and when the person says no and when the thing doesn't work out, now you're stuck to say, God, is this an obstacle that I need to pray through, or a closed door saying you weren't with me? Give you just a few more principles from this story, and I want you to place yourself in the minds of the Israelites, because right now they're blown, because they are not expecting to see a Red Sea closed off, because remember, they believe that this is what God's going to do. And there are two different people who are here in this text. The children of Israel are looking at the Red Sea as a closed door. How do we know? Because they want to go back to Egypt. They didn't ask for prayer. They didn't ask for God to do anything to pray their way through. No, but Moses says this ain't a closed door. It's an obstacle we need to get through. Two different opinions, and you're going to see very quickly how to tell the difference between the two. So when you look at Exodus 13, I want you to go there, Exodus 13, and look at verse 17. Remember the question we have to ask, how do we get there in the first place? Because that'll tell me which one it is. How do we get there in the first place? In Exodus 13 and 17, here's what the Bible says. Now, when Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, even though it was near. For God said the people might change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. Now, verse 17 is a very powerful, encouraging text for me, because what it lets me know is God had a plan for Israel. Do y'all see that? He had this thing outlined. And what ought to blow your mind even more about the plan that God had is not only was it a plan that was just outlined for them, it took where they were personally in mind. No, don't miss that. God said, I got a plan, but my plan is not just a random plan. I'm looking at where they are with me. And based on where they are with me, if I take them the short route, it's going to be too much for them to handle. So I'm going to give them another route so that they will be prepared by the time they meet the Philistines. Y'all missing that, so let me bring this a little closer to home. God not only has a plan for your life, but God takes into account where you are with his plan. And so when God is planning your trajectory and your journey, he knows what your fears are. He knows what your struggles are. And God does not put a plan in place that you will fail at. He's not going to send you along a way of life that you're not ready for, because he has taken your journey with him into consideration. All the 430 years of slavery, all the stuff that you're under, and God said that's going to be too much for them. And that's what God does for us. And here's what blows my mind. When I heard that and when I read that, I said, God, who on earth am I to not trust your plan for my life? This helped me trust his plan even more. I want to know more because I know my God is not just randomly putting something together. He is strategically putting a plan for my life in place that takes into account everything that I've been through. Every fear, every discouragement, every rejection. And he looks at it and he looks at me and says, I would send my son there even though it's shorter, but if I take him that way, he will give up before it's time. See, sometimes the reason that God is taking longer is you can't handle the shortcut. And the reason you can't handle the shortcut has nothing to do with your inadequacy. You just might not be where you're supposed to be yet. So when the Israelites are there at the Red Sea, what's crazy about this is that God specifically places them there because he needs the Red Sea to prepare them for what they're going to experience when they have to go into Canaan. And so what the Red Sea was there to do was provide for them when they needed a faith flashback whenever they run into something in the future. And so what God needs to do strategically in our lives is when he places us in positions where there are obstacles that we need to push through, is that obstacle is always there to prepare you for the greatness that you're about to experience. Because sometimes on the other side, you need a faith flashback to give you courage with what you're dealing with now. See, if there was never a Red Sea, they'd never be able to go back and say, if God got us through that, I know he can get us through this. And so sometimes you've got to go through a Red Sea so you can be prepared to enter into your Canaan. Because there are giants in Canaan. But if you got a God who can open up a Red Sea, you've got a God who can take care of a giant. But if you've never gone through a Red Sea, you'll never know that he can take care of a giant. So they're placed there. Like, this is God. Like, he's put them there. His strategic plan was to put them in that position. A position of defeat, God strategically put them in. I want to say that again, a position of defeat, God specifically put them in, and we're going to see why in just a moment. So the question that you're going to ask is, all right, if God put me there, how do I know that God has actually put me here? Remember, the question is, how did I get to this point so I can determine if it's an obstacle or that? We saw very clear hindsight. God strategically, put them there. But notice what you see throughout Israel from the moment Moses steps up on the scene. God's footprints are all over their journey. From not only the plagues of Egypt, but watch this, when they leave Egypt, there's a pillar of fire by night and there's a cloud by day. And all those clouds were there to do, and the fire there to do is to let you know, I'm with you. I got you. You going the right way. This is all me. This is not you. This is me. Because you all can't make this fire come. You didn't even ask for the fire to come, but the fire is there. And here's what we got to do on the journeys in our lives. Sometimes we are so quick to get to the destination that we don't pause to see how God is on the journey. And see, what you got to look for is you've got to look for the presence of God on your way to living out your purpose.